Okay, great. So I hope you're doing well today. Before we get started, just a quick note. I just want to make sure you're, comfortable and hopefully in a quiet space. We're going to do a little bit of thinking and a little bit of work today, and I just want to make sure that you have an environment that's conducive to that. So let's get started. So, I would love to know. Oh, thank you guys. I see you're from California. Oh, no worries, Anna. No worries at all. I'd really like to know what interested you about this topic. I'm thinking that you're probably here because something in your life is asking for your attention. Maybe something no longer feels right and it just feels off. And you want change. Maybe you feel like there's more out there for you, but you're not quite sure what that looks like or even where to begin. And that can feel really frustrating and unclear and overwhelming. And so today's webinar is really designed to help you with that. So, by the end of our time together today, you're going to better understand what you're experiencing and why it's been so hard to figure out what comes next. You're going to have a starting point, a way to begin thinking about your life a little bit differently. And most importantly, you'll feel more clear, more grounded, and more confident about taking your next step. And let me just say a couple words about what to expect today. This is not a session where you just sort of listen to me talk the whole time. You're going to be doing a little bit of work too, as I said earlier. I'm going to be your guide through a few simple reflection questions. And you can write things down if you'd like, or you can just think through them quietly. There's nothing you need to do to prepare, just only to think through while we're going through this. And the goal is not to figure out everything today, it's to begin seeing clearly what's already been asking for your attention. And we're going to be able to identify it, name it, and determine what you want to do next. So let me first introduce myself. My name is Sona Tucker, and I am a happily married wife of 33 years and a mom of two amazing adult children and my darling pup Stark. You see him there in the photo. I also have my dad here, in the photo in the corner too, who we take care of. And I'm based in Maryland in the Washington, D.C. area. And I'm also a very long time lover of travel. So, why am I talking to you about all of this? And what has travel got to do with it? About feeling stuck and not knowing what's next. I know this feeling because I lived it. Last year was a very challenging one for me. Many things happened that threw me for a loop. For almost 3 decades, I had a very structured professional life working with the government. And I had a successful career in communications that I loved, and I had a work family that was so supportive. And I had been working with them for so many years. And then last spring, everything changed in an instant. I was laid off. It was abrupt. It was shocking. And I was in a place where I felt no control. And that's not something I'm used to. It was really unsettling. I was also moving back to Maryland, where we used to live, and moved to Florida during the pandemic. But we had to move back because I thought I was going to the office 5 days a week again. Come to find out, a month later, I had been laid off. So we relocated from Maryland to Florida, where we literally felt like we were living in paradise. Um, and then I was also dealing with, very typical hormonal changes as a woman and health challenges. And these seemed to escalate because of all the chaos that was going on in my life. And on top of that, I was still going through an empty nesting stage, missing my kids and also taking care of my father, who was getting older. And it was really hard. And I experienced what felt like a perfect storm. It was just me and my husband trying to support it all. And to be frank, I cried a lot last year. And it's because all the things that had shaped my identity and my daily life were all changing at the same time. I was a devoted government employee, maybe I was someone who took their health very seriously, and I didn't feel like I could control it anymore. And now we were relocating, and everything happening all at once was one thing. But then what made it especially hard was that I felt like I was at a turning point, and I couldn't yet see clearly what that was asking of me. It's a very specific kind of a feeling. It's not panic. It's not even always sadness, even though I was pretty sad last year. It was like something is shifting and I couldn't name it, but you know it's there. And I don't know about you, but I'm a type A individual. And being that, uncertainty always makes me nervous. So, what I realized during that time is that this is something many women experience. I spoke to so many colleagues and friends, and they were all going through something. And, we're left trying to figure out what comes next when we arrive at this moment. Life just, the life we're used to that used to fit no longer fits quite in that same way. So, all of that to say, it's hard enough to have all these things happen, but what surprised me even more, that change was brewing in me even before last year. So for quite some time actually, and I didn't realize or knew it was happening. But guess what? It was actually traveling that helped me think through so many situations, gave me new perspective, and opened up my mind. Travel had already been something meaningful in my life for years. And I was always the one planning the trips. I'm a planner at heart, and I truly enjoyed it. So I would be the one to say, okay, what do we need right now? How do we want to feel when we go on this trip? What kind of experience would actually give us that? I didn't have the language for it at that time, but I was already using travel differently. Every time I stepped away with intention, I came back clearer, more grounded, and connected to myself. And I started noticing that pattern. So I knew I wanted to do something more long term in this field of travel, um, once I retired. But that came a lot quicker than I expected since I was laid off. But I did not turn to it randomly. I trusted something that I had already experienced over and over again. And that's when it clicked for me that what always helped me to begin to hear myself again was stepping away, creating space, and getting out of my normal environment. Travel became that opportunity where I could think differently. I could feel what mattered, and I could begin to imagine something new. And as a result, I could get more clarity. So I decided to become a certified travel coach and travel advisor and just go all in, not just to plan memorable, and meaningful vacations, but also to help women understand how travel can provide clarity in their life. Because it's not only something I love, but it's helped me and my family get through a lot. And I know that this is something that can actually help other women move through moments of transition as well. So, one example of this was a recent trip I had to Costa Rica, attending my first retreat. You can see all the beautiful things that we did there, and the community of women that I met. These were 17 women from across the US and overseas that I had never met before. But my mind opened up to so many possibilities and a deep knowing of what I wanted to do next just through that experience. And I know it did that for many of the other women who attended as well. And that's what I'm hoping today begins for you. So that feeling that you can't quite explain, it's not out of the blue. It's often the first signal that something is no longer aligned. Most women think they're stuck, but more often, they're just in a transition that they haven't yet named. And the good news is you can do something about it. Now, I want to say something that might shift how you're thinking about this. Most people believe that when something feels off in their life, their answer is just to fix it from where they are. Just try harder, push through, be more disciplined or more positive. But what if the issue isn't the effort? What if the issue is the environment? Because if your environment stays the same, your thinking tends to stay the same, right? You have the same routines, the same expectations, the same mental loops that kind of go through your head. And that's where so many women feel they are stuck. Not because they're not capable, but because they're trying to create a new version of their life from inside the current conditions that have shaped what they are today. And that's why creating space is not a luxury, but a necessity for clarity. Travel doesn't need to be used as an escape. Rather, it can be used as a tool, as a means to an end. So think about a time when you were away from your everyday life. Maybe it was your last vacation with family, or a girls' trip with friends, or a solo adventure. You likely thought differently. Things may have felt clearer, like you opened a door to something that had been closed. All of a sudden, possibilities seem possible. That's not accidental. When you step away, your patterns are interrupted, your perspective expands, your emotional state internally shifts. And what does that create? More clarity. I didn't realize how important that word was until my late 40s. Because, as we're growing up, we're more reactive to our life than actually proactive and leading it because we don't know necessarily where we want to go or what our purpose is. But having clarity in your next step, in your purpose, in your life is everything. And when that happens in the right environment with the right support, it becomes even more powerful. So now let's get into how do we even notice what's happening to us? How can we become aware? One of the clearest signals that something is shifting is when it starts taking more energy than it used to. Let me say that again. One of the clearest signals that something is shifting is when it starts taking more energy than it used to. You're being asked to do more to manage it, and it feels really draining. How does that resonate with you? In this next part of the talk, we're going to go through a guiding exercise to work through some of this. It's not about getting anything right, it's about noticing what's already there. I'm going to give you a few prompts. And if you have something to write with, just you can jot things down or you can simply reflect quietly. And if you feel compelled, please share in the chat because sometimes getting it off your chest into the ether really helps. Whatever works best for you. And as I ask each question, I'm going to share a few examples. And not that you have to choose one of them, but just to help you understand what I mean. So let's get started. So, the first question: what is taking more energy than you expected right now? For some of you, it might be your work. Maybe things that used to feel manageable now feel draining, or you're finding it harder to stay motivated or focused. For others, it could be your schedule. You're busy all the time, but it feels like you're always trying to catch up and you're never quite on top of things. It could be your family life, a lot of moving parts, a lot of people needing things from you, and you feel like you're constantly just giving, 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 right? Or it could be your health. Maybe you're dealing with changes in your body and it's taking more effort just to feel like yourself again. This is what I experienced as well last year. So there's no right answer here. Just notice what feels heavier than it used to for you. I'm going to give you a few seconds to kind of note that for yourself. So, what you thought about really matters here because if whatever is taking your energy is in a way that drains you, that's when something is a sign that you need to pay attention. It's often a signal that something is no longer aligned in the same way it was. It's not wrong or it's not broken. It's just no longer fitting the same way. And what most of us do in that moment is we try to push through. We tell ourselves, this is just a phase. I need to be more disciplined. I need to handle it better. But sometimes it's not asking you to manage it better, it's just asking you to notice it first. Yeah. When I see you're, tired of the changes of weather in the area I live, yeah, that can do it. There's certainly, change of weather also makes a difference in your mood, and certainly going, there's always the depression that kind of hits too, and when it's like winter. So there are a lot of things that could be, kind of affecting you. So the next question: what are you ready to stop carrying? And I want you to think about this a little bit more deeply. I mean, not physically carrying, but emotionally carrying. What feels heavy to you? What feels like it's been sitting on your shoulders longer than it should have? And think about this, beyond just tasks. For some of you, this may be responsibility, things you've taken on at work or at home that you never really pause to question. For others, it might be pressure, pressure to be a certain way, meet expectations, to hold everything together, or pressure you put on yourself to do something, complete something, or be something by a certain date. And it could be just emotional weight, worry, stress, or even something unresolved that has just been sitting there for a long time. And you could just be, it could be the role that you play, being the one who always shows up, who always takes care of things, always puts yourself last. What feels heavy to you in that way? And what are you ready to stop carrying? And whatever you think of here, it's not just something that you're tired of. It may be something that your life is asking you to release. And this question is really powerful because most of us are carrying things we never consciously chose, right? Responsibilities, expectations, roles, things that slowly just accumulate over time, and you don't even remember how you ended up with it. And at some point, your system starts saying, this is too much. And instead of listening, we normalize it. And we just say, this is just the way it is. This is life. So I know this is getting harder, but just stick with me. I'm going to go to the next question. Thinking through all of that, what is something that you hoped would feel different by now, but doesn't? And I want you to think about this honestly. Like maybe you thought your career would feel more fulfilling at this stage. Maybe you thought life would feel more settled or more clear. Maybe you expected, more freedom or more excitement or more meaning in your life. Or maybe you thought, once I get through this phase, things will feel better. And they haven't. Just notice what comes up for you with this question. So, this often brings up something deeper because it points to a quiet expectation you had for your life, something you thought would feel more fulfilling, more settled, more stable by now. And when it doesn't, we tend to turn that inward and we think maybe I did something wrong. But more often, it's not failure, it's just information. And it's showing you that something about the path that you've been on, it may need to shift. Yeah. Yeah. I'm reading your notes here. Joanna, taking care of people, that takes a big toll on you. Yeah. I hear you. Needing more time to travel to get away. So, how's everyone doing? You doing okay? I know this is a lot. It's a lot when you stop and think about all of these things that are on us. But now we're going to shift a little bit more. We're going to switch gears for the last few questions from what's not working to what's beginning to change. And I just want to pause here and see if thank you, Anna. Yeah, I just wanted to see if anybody wanted to share anything, that came up because these are heavy questions and sometimes we try to dismiss them. And, it really takes a lot out of us to just sit and be with ourselves and think through. So it's really deep work. So if you'd like to share, please do in the chat. And these are very personal questions, I understand. But it's good to kind of get it off your chest and identify it and name it. And that's exactly what we want to do today. So thank you for sharing. Um, yeah, caught myself wanting to leave. That's a sign of how heavy. I totally get it. I experienced all of this last year and I didn't know where to go. Um, and Joanna being in a situation where I would love to change. Yeah, thank you guys for sharing. So let's change gears here. Let's focus on the future. What do you want to make room for? So think back to your questions from, or your answers from all the previous questions. And is there something that you want to move up in priority? This doesn't have to be a big answer. It might be something simple, more space in your day or more time for yourself, more creativity or connection or rest, or as we talked about, travel. Sometimes it's not even fully formed yet. It's just a feeling of, I want more of this and less of that. And that's enough. See what that is for you. What do you want to prioritize? And that answer, even if it feels small, is not random. It's more direction for you. Desire doesn't show up fully formed. It shows up quietly at first. It might be a thought you had, or a curiosity, or a pull at your heartstrings. And most people just dismiss it too quickly. But this is what you really should be giving or paying more attention to when you feel that pull. So now finish this sentence. A normal day in your life feels like, and be honest with yourself. Does it feel rushed? Does it feel structured? Does it feel overwhelming? Or does it feel flat and repetitive? Or maybe it's fine, but it's just not energizing, right? Everything's going okay. It's your daily life, but nothing exciting about it. Just notice that tone of your day and see your comment there, Joanna. Yeah. So this matters because your life is not built in big moments. It's built in your everyday. So when something feels off, it's often not one big decision. It's about the way your daily life feels. And this is where alignment either exists or it doesn't. And that's really important. Okay, final question. We're almost there. Finish this sentence. You are becoming the kind of woman who, you might hear things in your head like who speaks up more, or who takes care of herself differently, who makes decisions more confidently, or, I'm becoming the kind of woman who does not settle for what no longer feels right. There's no perfect way to answer this, just what feels true to you. Yep, normal life can definitely can burn you out for sure. And you go through the motions and keep going. And that's not always the best, right? So, this last question is a little bit different because it's not about your current life, but it's about your identity. And real change doesn't just start with random action, it starts with who you see yourself becoming and believing it. That's something that took me a long time to come to grips with, but I'm here now and I'm pushing forward as well. And my word of this year for 2026 was becoming, because I wanted to become a different person. So let's pause just for a second. Everything that you wrote down or you noticed through all these questions, this is awareness. And awareness is where clarity begins. But here's the part that most people miss: awareness alone is not enough, because you can see something and still not know what to do with it. You can feel something is shifting and still stay exactly where you are. And that's where people get stuck. Not because they're unaware, but because they don't have the space or the structure to go deeper with what they are seeing. And this is the moment where most people go back to their routine, right? You close your notebook, you move on with your day, and everything just slowly fades back into the background. But what you touched on just now, that's the beginning of something meaningful. And if you stay with it long enough, that's where clarity will form. Not all at once, but piece by piece. So now close your eyes and imagine a place where you have space. What feels different? What becomes possible? This is all a starting point. And this is really what sits underneath the work that I do, which I'm going to go into now. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the process that I use to go forward after all that I experienced last year, and also where does travel come into it? One of the things I've come to believe very deeply is that transformation and clarity doesn't usually just happen because somebody gave you good advice. It happens when we finally have the space to hear ourselves think and believe that there's something more for us out there. I use a framework called the deeper method, and it's the lens through which I think about intentional travel, meaningful experiences, and really life transitions as a whole. Because for me, travel isn't only about the destination, it's the space to breathe. It's what comes possible when you step out of your normal environment and you give yourself room to reconnect with who you are, what you want, and what might be next. So, I want to share that framework with you now because it may help put language around where you are and what you may be needing in this season. I'm sorry. Joanna, I see your question about giving an example. I probably passed on. What kind of example were you looking for? Happy to go into that. Oh, of how to finish a sentence. Yeah. So I gave you a few examples there. Like, what kind of is this? I assume this is the one about becoming a new person. What do you believe that you want to do? What kind of woman do you want to become? Those are some of the things that you really need to think, identify, but then you have to believe it within yourself because it's not going to happen if somebody just says, "Oh, you could do this." You yourself have to believe it, and that takes a lot of courage. I hope that's helpful. Um, but let me know if you need more information there. So, this is the deeper method, and deeper is an acronym, and it stands for dream, envision, and explore, plan, experience, and reflect. And this is basically a flywheel that you continue going through for each phase of life that you enter. And I'm going to go through each section in a little bit more depth so you understand. So the first part is D, which stands for dream. And this may sound simple, but I think for many women, this is actually one of the hardest parts. Because after years of doing what needed to be done, taking care of other people, showing up for work, for family, for all the responsibilities, we can become very disconnected from our own desires. And we get so used to being practical and efficient and, what needs to happen next? Like that's what we're thinking about. But we stop asking, what do I want now? And not what should I want or what makes sense on paper or what would make everyone else comfortable. This is something definitely that I struggled with. It's what do I want? What am I longing for? What feels missing? What is calling me, even if I can't fully explain it yet? Dreaming is really about giving yourself permission to want something more or something different without needing to justify it. And for many women, that alone is just powerful. The next part is envision and explore. So once you begin to reconnect with what you want, the next step is to let yourself imagine what that could actually look like. What would your life feel like if it were more aligned? What would your days feel like? How would you want to feel in your body, in your work, in your relationships, in your sense of self? That's the envisioning piece. And then there's the exploring. Because sometimes clarity doesn't come from sitting in the same house, in the same routine, with the same thoughts, trying to force yourself to figure it all out. Sometimes you need a different view, a different pace or energy. Sometimes you need to step outside of the life that you've been managing in order to see the life that you really want. And that's one of the reasons I believe travel can be so transformative. It's, one of the things that gives you contrast. It gives you perspective and it opens up something in your mind. You begin to notice what feels good, what feels true to you, what feels expansive. But in contrast, it can also show you what no longer fits. So the next part is P for plan. And this is where things begin to take shape. Because dreaming is beautiful, envisioning opens up possibilities, exploring helps you see more clearly. But at some point, something has to become intentional and practical, right? Planning isn't about pressure on yourself or having your whole life figured out. It's not about controlling every detail. It's really about asking, if I want something to shift, what would support that shift? What kind of experience do I need? What kind of environment would help me breathe a little deeper, think a little more clearly, and feel a little more honestly? If we're talking about travel, planning means designing an experience with purpose, not randomly choosing a place and hoping something meaningful happens. And if we're talking about life, planning means beginning to identify the choices, the structures, and next steps to support the version of you that's trying to emerge. So, planning is where desire starts becoming direction. And then we move into E, which stands for experience. And this is where it becomes real because there's only so much we can understand intellectually. At some point, you have to step into an experience and let it meet you. You have to feel something or notice something different. Sit with yourself in a different way. This is why I care so much about creating intentional experiences for women. Because when you step away from your everyday life and into a space that has been designed for reflection, connection, and clarity, something automatically shifts. You begin to soften, you begin to notice what's been buried under all the noise, and you begin to hear your own voice again. And that's very different from just consuming more information or listening to a podcast or reading another book. Experience is embodied, it's lived, and it reaches places that logic alone cannot. And then finally, we have reflect. And this is such an important part because even the most beautiful or meaningful experience can pass by without truly changing us if we don't take time to reflect on it. Reflection is where we begin to ask, what did this show me? How did I feel? What felt true? What surprised me? And what do I need to carry forward from here? Reflection helps us turn experience into insight. It helps us connect the dots and make meaning of what just happened. And it helps us understand, not only what happened, but why. Why did it matter? And often that's where the real clarity starts to settle in. Not always in a loud, dramatic way, but sometimes very quietly, but clearly. So when you put it all together, the deeper method is really just a journey. First you dream and you allow yourself to reconnect with what you want. Then you envision and explore and you open up possibilities and step outside of the familiar. And then you plan and you begin to shape a path forward with intention. And then you experience and you step into something that allows real insight and reconnection. And finally, you reflect and you make meaning of it so that you can guide what comes next. That's how you go deeper. And what you have experienced today is just the beginning. You started to see something, maybe identified things changing in you and being able to name it. But most people do not stay with it long enough to fully understand what it's asking of them. But what if you could? And that's where intentional space comes in, and exactly why retreats matter so much. Because you can start this process on your own, but life pulls you back. A retreat gives you three things that are different. It gives you uninterrupted space, it gives you structure, so you're not wondering what to do with that space, and it surrounds you with other women who are going through something similar. And that's key because you realize, I'm not the only one feeling this way. And that combination of space, structure, and shared experience, that's where clarity deepens. And if you're listening to this and something inside you is saying, yes, this is what I need, I don't want more information, not more pressure, not more advice, but instead I need that space. I need clarity and a chance to reconnect with myself. Then I'd like to invite you to something very special and very intentionally designed. I'm really excited to share that I'm hosting a small retreat in beautiful Sedona, Arizona in September of this year. And it's called The Deeper Method to Your Next Chapter. And why did I choose Sedona? Because it's a place where I've been and I felt true energy and vibration. If you've been there before, you know the power of the vortexes there. They are spiritual power centers for energy flow. And that's what you need when you're planning your future. And this is, kind of a next chapter for me as well. I'm actually very much a beach person. I love the beach, but I wanted to get out of my comfort zone and build this here in Sedona. And this isn't going to be a large group. It's an intimate setting for just 8 women. It's for the woman who knows that there's something more for her, even if she can't fully name it yet. For the woman who's ready to stop just managing life and start listening more deeply to what's calling her forward. And it exists to give you not only a beautiful experience, but a meaningful one. So during those few days, we will move through the deeper process together. You'd have time to slow down, to think more, to reconnect with yourself, and also have meaningful conversation with the other women who are following a similar path. You would be guided through activities and exercises to embody the deeper method. And to go even deeper, we will hike in the red rocks one morning, we'll participate in a yoga session and a sound bath, all of which open up the body and the mind to new thoughts and actions. It feels very expansive. We will have communal meals together and build bonds. But most importantly, you're going to leave with something tangible. On the Monday after, you will have clarity on what's shifting for you and what that right next step is. A better sense of direction of what your larger next chapter looks like, and a 90-day action plan to help you make it real. And this is something that I'm very skilled at after leading large teams to accomplish big goals in my previous career in government. And finally, you get the support and encouragement and accountability to keep that you need to keep that momentum going. And this part is really essential because the bonds you form with others, like I did with this wonderful group of women, even in a short time, is immensely helpful in keeping you going. The community that results is what I feel really strongly about, and it's one of the most impactful pieces of this effort. And because we don't want this to just stay a moment in time, right? We want it to become a movement in our life. And the reason this retreat is different is not only about the location and the alignment and expansion, it's about the intention behind it. This is a guided experience designed to help you move forward in your life and get past the stuckness that you may feel. So we do not only talk about dreaming, we create space for it. We don't only talk about envisioning and exploring, we place you in an environment where that can actually happen. We don't only talk about planning, we help you to begin to think about what that next chapter looks like and start making it real. And we don't talk just about experiencing something, you actually get to be in the experience yourself and really feel it. And then when we reflect, so that you don't only just leave with inspiration, but with deeper clarity and a stronger sense of direction, we make sure to reflect upon all that happened that weekend. So, what I shared with you today is just the framework, the arc of the journey. And what we do on the retreat is to actually live it. And because you chose to spend this time with me today, I do want to offer something exclusively for you. For the next 48 hours, I am offering a $200 savings for those who join the retreat from this session. This is just a way to support you if you're recognizing that you're ready to take that next step. There's only 8 spots available, and this really is about creating the right space for the right group of women. And if that feels like you, I invite you to take a look. I will share the link with you for the retreat page, and you can find all the details about that. Um, but just in closing, you're not stuck. You are in a moment where something is asking you to change. And today you gave yourself something most people do not: space to begin seeing clearly. And you now understand more of what has been happening. And you have a starting point. And hopefully you feel more clear, more grounded, and more confident. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to be willing to take the next step. And I hope that's with me in Sedona. So thank you for joining today. And I hope this was valuable for you. I know there was a lot of deep questions here, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you. I'm going to stop my share here.